Welcome back to the show, Spicy Army. Today I have the privilege of speaking with Brian Fu from zkLend. But first, please make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification button, and smash that like button to support the channel. All right, let's get into it. Welcome, Brian, to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. How are you today?
Very good. Nice to meet you, Romeo. I'm very pleased to be on Spicy Channel here.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're excited to introduce you to our community, and really anybody that's watching this. So, why don't we start off with an introduction to who you are and how you got involved with zkLend.
Sure, of course. I'm Brian here. I'm one of the co-founders of zkLend. What zkLend is, we are building a money market protocol, a lending and borrowing protocol on StarkNet. And StarkNet is a zk-rollup layer 2 building on top Ethereum with the sole purpose of scaling Ethereum. We have started building the project early part of last year. And before that, I was actually working in traditional finance for quite some time. I was trained as a engineer and then moved on to start my career in investment banking. Did that for about 7 years before moving on to private equity. And so I have been on both sides of the lending table, so to speak, as borrower with private equity and then lenders with the bank. And chance to be at that, one day there was an event that made me realize that there are definitely a lot more interesting things going on in the crypto space that my traditional finance background can apply to it. And I think after that, I have been in touch with a lot of the builders around the ecosystem, and one of them, who is my friend, introduced me to a few fellow builders, and basically we got on talking, and the idea of building zkLend basically started from there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the common theme with everybody getting onboarded into crypto. It's just the a rabbit hole that keeps getting deeper and deeper, and meeting some of the people in the space as well. I mean, even for myself, I come from a totally different industry, and I think that there's kind of this synergy that people are coming to the blockchain space from all parts of the world, all demographics, all industries, and just creating this new one. So it's great to form, new relationships in that. So so you mentioned you met some people, obviously, throughout the process of getting introduced into blockchain technology as well as all these people. You've formed a team during that time. So tell us a little bit about that team and who is it comprised of?
So the core team is comprised of three co-founders, Jane, myself, and Jonathan. Myself, like previously mentioned, I was from a financial background, and basically all the loan terms, all the structuring of the product, I'm very hands-on and very intuitive in terms of knowing the risk management and basically transferring some of my knowledge base from the traditional sense into the Web3 sense, but making it a lot more efficient and a lot more intuitive for users to actually get on board. That's one. And then for Jane, she had basically she worked in finance for about 2 years as a trader, and then after that, she was with a Web2 delivery company, and her forte is basically go-to-market strategy, marketing, and also ecosystem building, because this is one of her core strengths in terms of building a community and building the company up from a rapid stage. And also Jonathan, he has been building different DeFi protocols before starting zkLend, and his previous project includes building exchange, synthetic assets, and so building on StarkNet is something that he is very compassionate about, and basically he convinced us to build on StarkNet. And then from day one, we know that because of our kind of common denominator in terms of financial background, we want to build a DeFi protocol, and we want to best to scale with the whole StarkNet ecosystem. We thought that the most fundamental, most primitive piece in terms of a lending protocol would be the one that would fit us the most.
Yeah, and quite the extensive background there in traditional finance, like you mentioned, as well as with respect to your core team and experience in DeFi protocols. So that obviously sets you up well in terms of building. So that being said, we know about you, we know about your team. Now tell us about zkLend. What is it?
zkLend, ultimately, it's a lending borrowing protocol where we have two sides of two subproduct underneath the zkLend brand. One is cater for permissionless retail users, and another one is for institutional users. For the permissionless retail users, it's very similar to a lot of lending protocol we have nowadays on Web3, including AVE Compound, Euler, and so forth. What the user can do is they can deposit their collateral onto zkLend, and then they will be able to use the collateral as security for lending. And basically, these would be lent out using an over collateralized manner. The reason for that is because there is no background check and there is no permission and there's no recourse to the individual that actually borrowed. So then that's why we have to have the collateral as a over collateralized security to basically protect us against a bad debt position. That's one. And then on the flip side, we have the zkLend institutional, and that it's catered for institutional users that need a extra layer of compliance, and also, for example, AML checking, CFT, and also the onboarding process and ultimately multi-sig control, let's say. And what we actually want to do with the institutional part, it's going through a uncollateralized or ultimately an unsecure approach. What that entails, it actually helps the institutions to increase the capital efficiency by, for example, they would be able to deposit 50 USDC and be able to borrow $100 BDC from it. And that would enable them to maximize their capital efficiency usage, and then also be able to do market making or do other trading activities because of the over leverage position. And because of this, there's also a financial due diligence process which we need to do for each borrower. And so they have to provide us with the on-chain and off-chain data, and also their kind of background check in terms of their financial standing, so that we get comfortable with the borrower as a legitimate borrower, and they will be able to open a pool, and the lenders will be able to access this information and access whether the risk is worth the reward, worth the interest rate they're paying.
Yeah, and quite a lot to dive into. Obviously, a very robust set of features will accompany that whole structure, which we'll get into. But one thing that always comes up in these kind of AMAs is really the focus that differentiates zkLend from the competition. So tell us a little bit about the competition, and also how zkLend solidifies its unique place throughout this market.
Right. I think for lending protocol, there are a lot of competitions around the entire Web3 ecosystem, whether that be on Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, and so forth. I think for us, our product, ultimately, the function, the features of it, it's very homogeneous to a lot of the lending protocol. I mean, the function, it's almost the same. But I would say one or two of our competitive advantages is that I think fast transaction and also cheaper transaction costs is a given. But what this actually enable us to do is we're able to do a lot more refined operations, because all the previous transactions that was not able to do on layer one, it's now something of a reality in layer two. And I can dive into that a little bit more. For example, let's say if we do liquidations on layer one, because the transaction cost and the slippage is relatively higher. So in order for a liquidator to make sense and make economic gains from it, they would have to liquidate a larger position. But for us, we can do a much finer tuned liquidation where we can liquidate just 5% of the loan or 10% of the loan instead of slashing 50% of it. That's a much better experience for the borrower. That's one. And then we're also able to do, for example, pool rebalancing and reward rebalancing a lot quicker, so that we don't have to wait till the end of the period in order to get that reconfig. And so that these are all features that a lot of the layer one would want to be able to do, but wasn't economical to do it. But we just unlock the doorway to do it. That's one. And then I think the second component of it is because we are one of the one of the earliest lending protocol to launch on StarkNet. So we actually form a lot of very strong partnerships with a lot of the AMMs, a lot of the DeFi protocols, and also gaming protocols on StarkNet, so that basically benefit a lot in terms of how users adoption comes onto StarkNet and being able to use all the other protocols and be able to ultimately route through zkLend as a fundamental layer, fundamental money pieces, so that we can basically help to maximize their yield, maximize their money being stored on wallets, and being able to provide a yield while they wait for the next big thing to come up on StarkNet. So these are all some of the early advantages that we enjoy. And I think down the road, we do see that for StarkNet and other zk-rollup as a whole, the innovations and also there is no bound in terms of how protocol are being built at the moment. For example, account abstraction opens up a lot of possibility in terms of how users deal with wallets and deal with transactions signing. And so with all that, we feel that we're at the very front end of the curve. And so that brings us a lot of users adoption that would not be able to enjoy on other layers as a whole.
Yeah, just it's amazing to hear the flexibility. You mentioned with the one thing that stood out to me at least was the liquidation threshold. And this is something that really gives not only flexibility but I guess reduces the barrier of entry to a lot of potential participants, and that really opens up the floodgates for more people to participate. So that's why it's great to hear that. And a bunch of other great things you mentioned, especially with the pool and reward rebalancing. So that's something that a lot of people can take advantage of. So now a lot of this is based on the fact that StarkNet has provided the fundamental infrastructure, let's say, to build zkLend. So I guess from a high level, why StarkNet? What was zkLend's perspective in making that decision? And I'm pretty sure pretty much everybody understands what StarkNet is. But why StarkNet?
Sure, sure. I think it has to come back to early part of last year when we started to explore the CK rollup space. There aren't too many readily available solutions at the time. I think at the time, CK-SIG was building their alpha mainnet. StarkNet launched their alpha mainnet, but it was still very, very rough. Very, very early versions of it. And I think Scrolls, Polygon, they're in talks of, creating something, but nothing is actually being launched. With all those, I think my decision is still the same. Would still be the same that we bet on StarkNet. It's because there are a few things that they actually stand out quite distinctively. One is their management team and execution ability of all the different scaling solutions platform coming on board. StarkNet is being built by Starkware, and they actually built a StarkX prior to that, which is a scaling engine specific to protocols. And they have some of the biggest DeFi and also NFT platforms being built, being supported by them. For example, Immutable, DYDX, Solware. And we saw the track record of having transactions being proved, the speed, everything was phenomenal. And also, the management team was also the guys that created Zcash back in the days. And they basically were the first guys that actually found a applicable usage of ZK as a ZK proof and being able to make it commercialized. And I thought that was really cool and really impressed with the execution ability and really saw that StarkNet is a cool composable layer that can enjoy the benefit of StarkX and still create a platform where protocol can build according to their own design, to their own specifications. So that's one. And then I think two, it's something that really attracts me for StarkNet. It's the ecosystem, because StarkNet it's a double-edged sword because they program in Cairo, and right now they have Cairo 1.0, but previously it was using Cairo 0, the first version of Cairo, which is not the most intuitive and easiest programming language for even for the most talented devs. But because it's a very comprehensive and lower language Turing complete system that actually fits for CK proof circuits. So it actually opens up a lot of different possibilities that Solidity cannot, or other programming languages that just cannot compete. And that attracts a lot of really talented developers to come onto StarkNet ecosystem at a very early stage. And we see that there are innovations that being created on StarkNet, but not on other chains, or not on other layer ones. And for us, I think because we saw that these innovations will ultimately bring a lot of users, and for us, we do want to scale with the blockchain or the layer that has the most users. So that becomes a very simple deduction for us to get early on StarkNet, be the fundamental piece, and grow with it. I think that would be kind of the two core reason why we choose StarkNet to begin with. There are definitely tons more. I think right now there's still a lot of advances, a lot of new innovations being brought in every day. I can't really keep track of it anymore, but I think these are all applications that will be able to help distinguish StarkNet and also distinguish zkLend as a primitive lending protocol on it.
Yeah, and just to add to the Cairo coding language, there's I'm sure anybody that's following StarkNet at this point would know that there's a huge update that's being or is underway right now, and that means that a lot of projects building on StarkNet also have to go through that same update because they have to update their code to interact with the new version of Cairo. So obviously that's a huge undertaking in some cases. So how does that how is that going? I guess like let's just check in on that because that's going to be a big thing in terms of your roadmap and any foreseeable delays or impacts on in schedule. So how has that been going? What's that like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for a lot of the early protocols that started last year, a lot of us actually start program using Cairo Zero already. And a few of us actually gone through the auditing process on Cairo Zero. And so for us, basically, we have gone through the Cairo Zero auditing with Nethermind and ABDK, and we felt comfortable that even without the Cairo One update, we do want to put our products forward, and that's why we had our mainnet, alpha mainnet launch a couple of weeks ago. But I think that creates this Cairo One update creates a split of timeline for the OG's protocol and the new wave of protocols coming in. Right now, we do see that a lot of protocols are waiting on the sideline. They understand the benefit of StarkNet, and they see that there is going to be a big upgrade in terms of the Cairo One language and the regenesis after September or Q3. So a lot of them are actually waiting on the sidelines for that to complete before coming in. And for us, because we were there early, we wrote the contract using Cairo Zero, and we gone through the auditing and everything. It may not be the most user-friendly languages, but because we were there early and then we built already, and that's why I think right now we are also one of the first guys that actually were able to launch a mainnet. And I wouldn't be able to say the same for a lot of different protocols to have been audited and written in Cairo Zero. But for us, in terms of our development roadmap, there is still a need for us to rewrite the contract in Cairo One. A lot of the logics will be the same. Syntax may change a little bit because it's closer to Rust now compared to the previous version. And it actually unlocks a lot more different features and call functions that were not able on Cairo Zero. So we actually are able to improve our operation and improve our features because of the rewriting. So in terms of our mainnet our mainnet, our product development, it didn't put us back too much because we're also launching our mainnet already. But on the back end, there is a overlapping process that we need to running in parallel where we have a product running and we are also rewriting the code in Cairo One in parallel. So the good thing is there is no breaking changes so that we don't have to pull all the funds from Cairo Zero and put it onto Cairo One. The bad thing is the time that we spent on writing Cairo Zero, I wouldn't say it's wasted, but it's definitely it would be a lot more efficient if we start right off the bat with Cairo One, and also the auditing. I think it's something that we also have to take into account, but because safety is kind of the utmost important for us, it's not a cost that we want to save.
Yeah, and just to add to that, of course, hindsight 2020, building on Cairo 1.0 would have been amazing, but it's also the hardship and the learning curve that zkLend had to go through in building it out on Cairo Zero would really lead you guys or end up helping you guys in the long run, because now you're kind of leading the pack. I can definitely see that from, at least from the VC side perspective. In terms of scheduling, you guys are pretty much on track for one of the earliest launches on Cairo 1.0, and a lot of other projects are leaning more towards Q4, end of the year, pretty much. And so that kind of ties into our next line of questioning regarding your mainnet. So we talked about kind of Cairo 1.0 being a part of the whole process and leading up to the mainnet. So now let's talk about the mainnet. Why do you feel like this is a good time? Walk us through it.
Sure. I actually get asked this quite a lot because our testnet was actually live in September, last September, and then we had our testnet running for about 5 6 months before we actually pulled the trigger and decided that yes, we want to convert and launch mainnet. The reason why we launch in May rather than earlier is because um, I would say early part of this year, StarkNet, there's still less certainty in terms of their development roadmap. I think it was around February, March time when they had the StarkNet session in Israel, where a lot of the pieces actually falls together, where they would introduce StarkNet version 11 and then version 12 coming in June, and then version 13 when regenesis would happen, and then you would see the roadmap of the performance trio coming in, and then later on would have the fee market to make sure that the fee structure is optimized. And with that, we felt that okay, since we have the roadmap and we understand the timeline that it's going to be delivered, we can start to deduce okay, how long are we going to be out on mainnet with our Cairo Zero code before the actual Cairo One code will come to replace it. And if it's going to be a very short period of time, may as well just wait for Cairo One. But we felt that there is actually an advantage for us to come early and to basically let people try try using the wallets, try using a lending protocol on StarkNet, because I think we are doing it for two purposes. One, it's getting, I would say, first mover advantage to start to get TVL, get people excited, and when they bridge capital over to StarkNet, there's nothing really for them to use other than putting it on AMMs. But now they can put it on any protocol and then get a little bit of deposit yields. Plus, they can borrow and then put it onto other AMM if they wish to after that. So there's a lot more use cases to it. And as soon as we open that up, we start to get a lot of users coming in. So far, we have over 10,000 wallets interaction with us. And in terms of the TVL, we got to around 900K over a course of about 2.5 weeks. That's not phenomenal if you compare to the grand scheme of things, but in terms of StarkNet performance and the TVL of about 50 odds million right now, I think that's actually a pretty good ramp up for just a very short period of time. And so what we want to do is we want to make our name to be one of the OGs. That's one. And two, it's because we felt that there's a need for protocol to actually come onto StarkNet and not wait till regenesis. Because if you keep waiting, then StarkNet it's going to be a more research tool, a research experiment tool where people will just look at it, understand the tech, and then not really coming on and try it out. And so we want to basically be the agent that people would be able to use and be able to get onto StarkNet and start enjoying the benefits of it. And once you have that, I think the how not vicious cycle, but then the accumulated effects start to happen, and we see that more protocols start to come onto mainnet because they see that there are actually first mover advantage. There are actually users willing to come on, and that's why we're able to form partnership with a lot of the other money markets or other DeFi protocols on StarkNet and be able to make advantages of it.
Yeah, and yeah, that first mover's advantage, I think that's very key in the success of any project. In the sense where, specifically with your testnet, having the amount of time, live, let's say, for users to interact, for the team to see the shortcomings of certain aspects of the product and improving on it prior to this major update with Cairo 1.0. This comes as a huge advantage, and I think this is going to be a very, very fruitful position you guys have taken, from December of last year, right? So, over months of experience, months of exposure, months of updates. Are really going to set you up right for this inevitable mainnet launch. So that's really good to hear. We touched on the advantage. We touched on a lot of different aspects of the mainnet. I want to also, give the community a chance to chime in here. So why don't we switch gears here and move on to our community questions? For all our viewers, these are questions that were asked to our community. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All the links to zkLend as well as Spicy Capital will be in the description down below. So these questions were asked by our community a little over a week ago when our announcement for this AMA first went out. And so we've collected the 3 best questions here, and we're going to just ask them to Brian here. So let's start with the first question here. So this person asks, how has the bear market been testing your team? If this continues to persist to next year, are you guys prepared to survive through this bear market? And what are your plans for the next 6 months?
Good question. I think the bear market really put things into perspective. I think it affects us the most around early part of this year. We were quite uncertain as to when we should launch the mainnet, whether we should switch strategy and try to launch on other chain first, or for example, Arbitrum before coming back to StarkNet. And for us, I think that ties to the decision to launch on mainnet, StarkNet first. And actually, I think right now it proves the strategy to be the right one. I think for us, presuming that the market is going to be more or less the same or going into a more bearish mode for the rest of the year, it wouldn't necessarily put us at a very poor state. The reason being, I can explain. One, it's because I think StarkNet itself, there's still a lot more improvement that needs to get done. And for a overheated market where people are expecting things to come out really fast and the hype it's on and everything gets overvaluated, that would actually put a lot of strain on protocol that built on StarkNet to create a very good product. And then you start to have very shilly products, product that actually focus a lot of tokenomics and playing it in terms of creating value, but not really creating a lot of users value in terms of the actual usage of the protocol. So I think right now, even the bear market that we experienced a couple of months ago for the past, let's say half a year to a year, actually put us to be more grounded and a lot more realistic expectation as to how we launch a protocol, focus on safety first, because we do see that during the bear market, a lot of protocol actually either from exploits or from a lack of management ability may have suffered in terms of treasury management and things like that. So it actually puts us at a different paradigm where we would be able to look at that and learn from others. And secondly, it's because for us, StarkNet is improving, and for us, our features are also coming on and improving as well. So even if there is a bear market, not saying that it would be a prolonged, for example, a year to 2 years, that would put everyone at a very poor stage. But at least for the next 6 months, we feel comfortable that we have enough to do. We have enough features we want to build out, and we are very clear on our development roadmap so that once we finish the 6 months, we would come up with a lot stronger capability, a lot stronger features. And then when the time comes and the market booms again, we actually would be at a much stronger state to compete with some of the narratives out there. So yeah, that's kind of my view. I don't really fear it. I think it would actually make us a lot more solid in that sense. But obviously, a bull market um, would be great for tokens, would be great for users activity. And I mean, I'm happy both sides. I think having a quasi kind of a warm lukewarm market right now, it's actually not too bad for people to get used to the StarkNet ecosystem and start to get testing. So I mean, gas cost is not too much compared to DeFi summer. So I think yeah, it's the right time.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's an excellent answer. I mean, you can really tell how projects take advantage of the bear and the bull markets based on how they perform during this time, and that's not we not to say that a poor performing token during the bear market is a project that has no future. That's not the point. The point is that like how do you use, like you said, your runway management of funds, your management of time. And during this time, you guys, it's clear you've been building, you've been preparing, and that's going to set you up right for when that bull run does come. And that's amazing to hear. So let's move on to question number 2 here. And this person asks, could you provide more information on zkLend Alpha's mainnet launch, including the auditing process conducted by ABDK and Nethermind, and how the formal specification by Nethermind contributes to the protocol's security and reliability? So we started the conversation about the mainnet. This kind of dives in a little deeper as well.
Yep. So in terms of our risk management framework, code auditing is definitely an important piece. A lot of protocol does the code auditing process, but not the formal verification or formal specification. I can explain and go a little bit more into that later in a bit. So for our code auditing process, the reason we choose two is because I think at the start right now, Cairo Zero Code is still relatively new for all users, and um, Nethermind has been forefront, one of the best infrastructure and security agent in the space. But for us, I think we want to take it one step further to have a second opinion in a sense. So that's why we ran through both sides and then ran through both ABDK and Nethermind so that we can cross-check whether we would be able to capture some of the known knowns. Obviously, the auditors would have captured it, but the unknowns are some of the things that we do want to definitely pay attention to. And that's why we were hoping that the two would be working in parallel, but they're not working in together, so that they would provide a safe, a stronger safety net for us to capture anything that it's not known to one party, but being found out by another. And the process took us about 4 to 6 weeks for completion. The agreement was enter, I would say, later part of 2022. Our auditing process started by end of 2022, and then it was completed around Q1, Q2 this year. So the two issued the report for us already, and there were no material defects or anything with the code. There was some syntax improvement, but I think nothing that's stand out of place. And we actually went one step further with Nethermind to do the formal verification process. The rationale for doing the formal verifications, and we later changed the scope to formal specifications, it's because a lot of the libraries and a lot of the SDK that were developed by they were developed for Cairo. It's still a lot of them are actually produced by other developers. They're open source, they're community driven. Um, and for us, we want to make sure that these would not be a factor of weakness for us. So, which is why we have Nethermind to do a formal specification process to ensure the well-formedness of the protocol and the whole logics of the protocol, so that it's not just with the code itself, but with the whole logic of running. For example, once you deposit and then once you do a withdrawal, and then you would have the health factor reaching a below one level, what would happen, whether there would be any extreme case that this equation may not hold. There will be singularities, and these are things that we look for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. Let's move on to our last question here from this subscriber, and this person asks, can you provide more details on zkLend's approach to risk management? How are risks associated with lending and borrowing activities assessed, monitored, and mitigated within the protocol? So I think you touched on this a bit too, but yeah.
Yep. I think there are four layers that we have implemented. Code auditing and also formal specification, it's one layer. Second layer, it's actually in the parameters and protocol design. And what we mean by that is for us, we actually have a two-side factors, meaning we have a collateralized factor for the amount you deposit in and then how much you can borrow against that. And we also have a borrow factor such that the asset you borrow will also be discounted by the borrow factor. And what that means is we actually capture both the price movement of the single assets and the correlation of the assets between your borrow and collateral. So for example, if they move in sync, your risk may not be as high because your collateral increase with your borrow amount. But let's say if they move out of sync, then you would have a situation where your collateral will not be able to protect your borrowing. So then that's why we have these factors being implemented in the first place, so that we can better capture the correlation of assets in the borrowing pair. That's one. And also in terms of the design, when we roll out our alpha mainnet, we were actually quite skeptical in terms of how we manage risk. So we, even with auditing and everything, we felt that there still needs to be some guardrails for us to grow, for us to ramp up. And that's why we set a very small borrowing cap when we first launched our alpha mainnet. It was 3K for each asset, and within 24 hours, it was maxed out. It was not the supply side, it's the borrowing side. So we increased it to 15K right there and then. And then I think it was another 24 hours, it was maxed out again. So we keep increasing the more borrowing cap. And then I think right now we're at a comfortable range of about 80K for, 150K for USDC and ETH, and then 80 for some of these stable coins, and then around 30 for BDC because it's not as utilized. I think this exercise would go on, and then ultimately we want to lift the cap, but I think it's still a good practice for us to kind of manage our growth and making sure that the network and our ramp up and our operations will be able to grow with it in terms, I mean, also including, for example, liquidations would also work in sync and perform robustly with the borrowing cap growth. And one last layer of protection that we have is a post-deployment monitoring. Some of you may have seen that we have a partnership with Hibernative, and what they do is they would help us track interactions with users with our protocol. They would track Oracle risk. They would track some of the for example, sanction fund, sanction wallet interaction with our protocol. And what they do is they do preemptive warning for us to prevent exploits, prevent attacks, or prevent any compliance issues that we might run into. So I think that's why I think the 4 layers actually provide a very strong network of design, pre-deployment checks, and post-deployment checks, where right now we feel relatively comfortable, but I think there are still a lot of insurance and a lot of reassurance that mechanism we are going to put in place to make sure that as the protocol grows, we will not be open up to new attack factors and vulnerabilities.
Yeah, no, quite a lot of systems in place to prevent any erroneous issues on site on the platform. So that's I'm sure a sigh of relief for a lot of users, because they know that you're taking care in protecting them as well. And it's also good to see that you're listening to the feedback of the network as well. Increasing the cap based on demand. So that's very, very good to see. So and it seems like everything just scales accordingly. So that's another thing with zkLend that really provides the the platform for a lot of users to know that everything is like you said, safe as well as scalable. So that concludes our community question segment, and we appreciate all the questions that we received from our community. To those that are listening and watching and or reading this later on, be sure to check if your question was selected. We will be reaching out to the winners, and you will be receiving the reward from the prize pool. So really great questions. Thanks everybody. So let's move on to some other closing remarks that we want to touch on, specifically surrounding the roadmap. So we touched on kind of looking forward to the mainnet, but one thing that I love to ask projects is, it's been a long journey, to say the least. So during that journey, you've obviously gone through some impressive milestones. What are some of the milestones that really stand out to you? And looking forward, what are some of the great things that you're excited about?
I think in terms of milestones, getting our testnet out and then getting a lot of feedbacks from users in terms of because we had a campaign called Moon Landing campaign, and it was getting feedback from users about the protocol itself. And I think that was quite humbling in the sense that one, we do actually receive overwhelming response, overwhelming suggestions on how to improve. And I think those responses are not um, malicious or are not in terms of trying to attack you, but a lot of them are actually their real feedback and hoping that you will create a better product. And so I think that was a great milestone for us, so that we do have people on our back that actually want to carry us forward. And that's why we try to implement as many of those that people reflect and have those into our next iteration over the course of from September all the way till March. That's one. And then another great milestone for us is definitely the mainnet alpha launch. I think that one we don't have too much expectation, because I think given StarkNet it's still in alpha stage, for us it's still in alpha stage. And to be very honest and blunt about this, I think the performance of StarkNet it's not the most optimized at the moment,
Hmm.
but we still see that there are users that actually support us and participate in a lot of the campaigns that we have for when we go launch and we go live, and also provide feedbacks on the side in terms of UI, in terms of their experience, how they felt about the actual experience of it. So, and right now, I think the TVL is growing gradually, and it's to a point that we feel it's actually quite encouraging for us to um, that we were on the right track. We will put up more new features so that we make sure that these will not be just a short boom. It actually provides real utility for users coming on. And I think these would be kind of the two key items that I would want to highlight. And it actually also ties in with how the committee is actually very supportive, and want to give a shout out to them as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure that will continue on with a really wonderful community that zkLend has, and obviously we urge everybody that's a part of Spicy Capital to follow and subscribe to everything that has to do with zkLend. All the links will be in the description down below. But Brian, I wanted to just say, I really appreciate having you on the show. It was a great AMA, and I think one thing that, a lot of things that our viewers are going to see from this is just the care and effort that goes into producing zkLend. You're constantly building. You're constantly, regardless of the market sentiment, that's one thing, and you're also looking into listening to the feedback that you're getting from the community. So it's great to see that the care and the effort that's being taken here. And for again, I urge everybody that's watching right now to really to jump into everything that has to do with zkLend. Like I said, all the links will be in the description, so be sure not to miss anything. Brian, again, it was a pleasure and a privilege to speak to you today. Do you have any closing remarks for the community?
Yeah, yeah. I think one closing remark I would like to give to the committee is that um, one, like you said, try it out, come, join a community. I think right now, StarkNet, it's still growing, it's still early. The early users always have advantages. And also for zkLend, we would have our mainnet launch when Regenesis come. So it would be in about 2 to 3 months. And under wraps, we are having new features being built at the moment. So that will be, I think, it will be a surprising experience for users. And around that time, I think it's also when we would start to have some tokens being mixed in. And I think that's going to be a quite exciting journey for the team and also for users as well. So I think for the next 3 to 4 months, it's going to be a lot of action-packed activity for zkLend and for the StarkNet community. So definitely don't miss out, and be sure to follow us to keep close, and let us know if you have any feedback. Like I said, we would always appreciate feedbacks.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, well said. And so that's the end of the show, Brian. And again, we appreciate you having you on the show. Looking forward to all the great things you guys are going to be doing in the next 3 to 4 months, and obviously onwards after that. It's going to be an amazing sight to behold, and we wish you all the best. And can't wait to have you on the show again.